Hello, this is Phil Eklund, Sierra Madre Games, and I'm going to introduce you to Greenland. The game and the place. It's a fascinating place, this little corner of the world, little thought about, but in history, it's the first place where East met West. This is the place where Europeans and Native Americans, either the Tunits or the Inuit peoples, met for the first time after a separation of about 50,000 years or more. And by this time they had vastly different ways of life and vastly different cultures. But in a really hostile land like Greenland, where survival depended on very small things, the survival tactics of all the cultures involved would be important in either winning a game or surviving as the weather turned colder and colder in Greenland. This takes place about 1,000 years ago or so, when the Vikings arrived and the Thule arrived, the present-day Inuit. Actually, the Inuit arrived after the Vikings, so in this comparison, the Vikings were the Native Americans, so to speak. There's also in the game, which can be now in this new Kickstarter edition, up to 4 players. We will have the Tunit, the most ancient of the races that inhabited and lived in Greenland, and the Sea Sami, another European tribe that might have arrived in Greenland during this time. They were certainly a seafaring people, and there's certainly suggestive legends, but there's no definite evidence that they got here. But nevertheless, in the game, we are introducing the Sea Sami as a 4th player. So you can play 1 to 4 players in this proposed edition. In fact, I'll just show very briefly some of our initial layouts of the Sea Sami daughters. Here's one who's the skiing daughter and the drumming daughter, both of which are important elements in the Sea Sami today. And the Sami peoples are known in general for being the ones who have domesticated the reindeer, or caribou as it's also known. And this was really the last megafauna domestication in the world. So, what's this game about? How do you play it? What sort of elements will you need in order to survive and win and dominate in Greenland? And I say survive and dominate because, as mentioned, you can try a very aggressive stance in Greenland. And in my opinion, both the Inuits and the Norse Vikings were rather too aggressive in their tactics in Greenland, when they should have been trying to either intermarry or in other ways exchange trade and culture. This was the height of the Little Ice Age, or the beginning, I should say, of the Little Ice Age, the LIA. So as the weather got colder and supply ships stopped coming from Europe, the inhabitants were left on their own in an island without trees. They couldn't make ships or repair their boats if they were broken down. And in this regard, the Inuit and Tunit ships that are made of animal skins rather than the plank clinker ships of the Vikings is a big advantage, in that you can try to get supplies either from the New or Old World on Greenland. So here's a possible setup of a game. The game is similar to many of the other games that I've done in the Dominata series. First, you take an event And this is a sample event here, which shows that there is a supply ship coming. The Little Ice Age has not come so severe as to stop those from coming. It also gives a turn order. Which color? The Norse is first here, then comes the Inuit player. And then there's some events, and you have to look at the back of a rule book for the Rosetta Stone. So decipher these events. I should mention that all the cards are icon driven, so that there's no language dependency. There's the text on it is fluff text, is not necessary to play the game. Then once you've done these events, and I can see that there's looks like there's a chaos event. If you've got too many population, more than your leadership can handle, they'll wander off into chaos. It also shows that the weather is getting colder and that you have to support. There's been really bad winter this year, and you're going to have to support your elders or send them off into the snow. After you've done the events, you auction off the card. This represents the trade goods that the ship has brought from the New World, in this case. In this case, it's an imported crossbow. And this gives you advantages in your die rolling against certain hunting prey. Against certain prey, or in warfare, you can use a crossbow. It's a pretty awesome weapon. In this regard, I can see that if you're going to be on a Sabine raid or some other raid to try to forcibly marry foreign daughters, that it gives you an advantage in all the threes that you roll are an automatic success. And in hunting on land, all threes you roll are also an automatic success. So this is a very powerful weapon indeed. In fact, a whole dynasty might be built around this weapon, which you're trying to keep in repair generation after generation. Each turn's one generation long in this game. So after you've done your events, then you do player assignments. And you can assign your cubes, and these are your hunters here. So you can assign them to hunt either in North Greenland or South Greenland. And we've got sort of an assortment of biomes here that you can try to hunt. It looks like the Norse player red, is going after the walrus here in North Greenland. There's the polar bear, a bit more dangerous. Most dangerous of all is trying to hunt the bowhead whale. We can also see that the Tunip player has a small colony in the New World, either Markland or Vinland, but they've got one in Canada, basically, Markland. We also have some Tunics who are going to try to club baby seal pups in southern Greenland. So, and you can also assign, if you wished, for exogamy. This is to try to marry a foreign daughter. And I've got some of the daughters up here that look pretty marriageable to me. These daughters, by the way, are going to be, probably will be getting a face uplift here if the Kickstarter will allow it. So they'll look a little bit less generic than here, if all goes well. You can also assign, at an energy cost, some of your hunters to become elders of your tribe. And here for the Thule player, we've got the chief, the shaman, the sage, the war chief, tracker, and mariner are the basics. And it's possible, this is under polytheism, it's possible to switch to monotheism by flipping over the card later in the game. All the cultures eventually, except the Tunit, I should mention, eventually went to, during this time period, or shortly afterwards, went from polytheistic, believing in many gods, many personal gods, to monotheistic, a hierarchy with one supreme god and supreme religious leaders and down on the line. It's a different mindset, really. So after each player is assigned, beginning with player red in this particular turn, and I'm going to say that we've assigned something like this, that we next make negotiations and attacks. So it's possible, for instance, that walrus is very popular. Because, why is the walrus popular? The whole Greenland economy is built around ivory. And ivory is something that's not available in Europe, and it's a valuable luxury item. And you can get it from walruses or narwhals. And so the export of ivory is what was important. In particular, when the trade ship comes, the ship captain, whether he's an official member of the Royal Norwegian Monopoly, or if he's a privateer, no matter what, all he'll accept in payment is ivory. We have three types of, I wouldn't say currency, but three types of resources in the game. There's ivory, as already mentioned, iron, which is rare on Greenland, but absolutely essential for the Norse culture and for weaponry in general. And finally, there's energy. So whatever you can burn, usually like blubber or wood, if you're going to import it from Canada or something. So these are the resources that are kept track of by either white, black, or orange discs in this game. And if you don't have enough to maintain, for instance, your cow, this is a Norse farm animal here. It's also a possibility for Greenland ponies, Icelandic sheep, settlement goats. And of course, the Sea Sami will probably have the reindeer, but they could also have the Sami goat or Lapgit. Yeah, I've got a Swede here who's coaching me on how to navigate this language. Actually, it's Yoon Manker of Einget. You want to come over here briefly, Yoon, just to show off. Yoon was his grandfather is an ethnographer that studied the Sea Sami, has published many books on it. So he was my advisor in the Sea Sami fourth player. That would be this card here. And a lot of what's important and not important to their culture to this day, because they've sort of maintained some sort of cultural integrity in the midst of bustling Europe and sort of still are thriving to some extent. The Sea Sami, the maritime branch of this was wiped out by the Great Plague, unfortunately, but the mainland Sami are still going strong. The Tunit are another one that's with us no longer. The story is the last remaining outpost of Tunits somewhere and on a small island that a whaling ship visited, and one of the sailors was sick, and within 2 weeks or 3 weeks, all remaining Tunit died. This was like 1905 or something. And they died before a single missionary could convert them or decipher their language. Other than some hand signals and the like, no real communication was ever established with them. Another tragic story of usurpation in Greenland, because this was their headquarters at one time. But let's look here. Can you hold the spear of power for a second? I will. We've got a conflict here in the walrus area between 3 Tunit hunters and 4 Norse hunters, 4 Vikings. Now, these are going to be meeples in the new edition instead of the generic cubes because they look a little bit nicer. One of them is bigger than the others, and this will be the so-called alpha. Now, alpha is like a super hunter. And so before we go into dice rolling to see who wins or loses, we go through a little negotiation. And you're the Norse, right?
Of course I'm a Norse. I am Norse myself, so.
Obviously.
And you are too by heritage, by the way.
Yes. They come from Finland, but I'm told they're part of the second Swedish Crusade. Yeah, second Swedish Crusade. So perhaps you're a little bit closer to the source than
I am.
Okay. So, you've got me a little bit outnumbered here.
Yes.
What would you give me to go away?
Well,
Shoo.
Yeah, well, that you go away.
No, you. No. This is.
Should I go away?
There's a little bit lost in communication
I
here.
have a super hunter here.
Super hunters are no better than any other hunter in combat.
That is true, but they are good at finding the walruses. But okay, you want me to go away.
And I've got a crossbow. I was smart enough to get this crossbow.
Oh, that's news. Okay.
Yes.
Well, if you have the crossbow, then I might go away if you let me. Let's see. Maybe if I get to marry Nelly.
Nelly?
Yeah.
You can marry Selah, but never Nelly. Nelly is my precious flower.
Well,
except there's no flowers in Greenland. Anyway.
Nelly or nothing.
Okay.
I marry Nelly. And nice meeting you. Happy hunting.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. So that was an example of a negotiation, but had he been a little bit more Viking-like, then he might have, it may have come down to blows here. And then we would roll 1 die for each of our hunters, and I would roll as well for each of mine, and any ones will be a hit.
And you will start because you are... No,
the one with the most iron starts.
Yeah, and none of us has iron.
Neither of us have iron, so we're gonna have to go in player order. So you will start because the Norse start here. This is a big advantage. Uh-oh. Both of these ones represent Norse fury, and we've got 2 cubes going into Valhalla.
Yes.
But the last one's going to have his revenge. You'll see.
I will see. You only have 1 dice now. That's an important difference.
Since they got the first attack, and the one with the most iron gets the first attack, they sort of winnowed out. But you can see just how pathetic one guy can be.
Even though we had a crossbow.
Even though I had a crossbow, we haven't quite figured out how to load this thing yet. So now that combat is over, we still go into the hunt roll. This is phase 3 of the, phase 4 is the hunt roll. And so every place with hunters are going to have to make a roll. And I'll let you make a roll for the Thule up here.
All right.
Now, the number of dice you're rolling is going to have to be 8. 8?
Yes, because that one...
Yes, the alpha you don't have to roll. It automatically rolls to 1, and the 1 is a success. Actually, even 1s or 2s are successes if you're on the warm side. And we are on the warm side. I have to place this over here, by the way. I didn't do this quite correctly. Okay, so the warm side, we're all on the warm side, so every one or two that you roll will be a hit. Now, before you roll, how many hits are you going to need in order to succeed against this bowhead whale?
3.
Three hits, so he's going to need 3 ones or 2s. Now, he's already got one of them, and however, every 2 and 3 he rolls is going to be a hunter death. Because hunting whales is pretty dangerous. Now, the Thule were specialized in this. This is how they really spread from their origins in Alaska across the Arctic like Huns. As I mentioned, they got to Greenland after the Norse got here. But when they did, they were very warlike, and but they were very fearless as well. Their particular enemies were not the Norse, but the Tunas, who they wiped out wherever they went.
So if I should roll now, and there are the little icons with stars on here that represents how many I need of the success. And on this card, on the warm side, it says what the star represent, in this case, 1s and 2s.
So, okay, 1s and 2s. Okay, all right. So you were successful in this in as much as you got 4 successes plus the alpha. Now, to take a trophy, you need 4 of the same, and we didn't quite get a trophy here.
So I got more than 3 or more of the successes, so I for sure get the reward from hunting this. But if I get 4 of a kind, and it could be any, it doesn't need to be 1s and 2s, it could be 4 of a kind of any number of the dice, I would also have exterminated these.
Exterminated it, yeah, that's such a harsh word.
Okay.
What you would have gotten was 13 victory points.
Hey.
This is the positive for mounting it on your wall and impressing all the Thule women.
Yes, definitely. A bowhead whale on the wall. I need a bigger house.
You need a bigger house, this is true.
And also to mention, these numbers is probably going to be tweaked.
Yes, that's true. I've already told Kareem that this should be 9 instead of 13, so it's not quite so dominating.
However, if I would have had some elders, there may be situations when this token here, or this icon showing that this is a harpoon-like hunt, could allow me to re-roll stuff. And I also have this little daughter here, Kirima.
Oh yes, we do have Karima. This allows you in a harpoon hunt, and this is a harpoon hunt because you can see that in the corner of the card, that you're allowed to re-roll, if you wish, any 4s. And maybe if you roll like 2 more 2s, you could get this trophy on the wall.
Actually, just 1 more 2, because it's a quadruple, I will get the trophy. So I need 1 more 2.
Oh, that's true. I can't count. I haven't reached that.
The thing I might consider here is that any 2s and 3s will kill people among my hunters, and already 3 had died from these 3 2s. So it's a risk.
True.
But 13 points.
So if you wanted to minimize your losses, you could try re-rolling the 2s instead. But that would possibly mean that you would fail.
I don't think I have any 2 re-rolls.
Oh, you can only re-roll 4s.
Yeah.
Ah, yes.
So it's in the rules.
It's in the rules. Well,
Anyway.
I'll have to read those someday.
So I can re-roll this, and I think I would, because 9 points or 13 even is a huge amount in this game. I'd say 30 points is a good score. 40 even better. Usually would win with 40 or even 30. Let's see. No.
So you didn't improve your situation, but you didn't get any more hunter deaths either.
3 here.
Oh, you did.
Yeah.
Oh, you did.
And note that this is a 4, but I can only re-roll once, even though I got.
Yeah, that's a good point. So we lost 4 to Valhalla altogether. But on the positive side, each turn's 1 generation long, and in the next generation we'll have 5 new babies as a result of this, and so yeah, you actually
It's a net gain.
yeah, there's a net gain plus the 4 energy.
Valuable.
That's pretty significant. And you didn't get the 9 victory points for having a trophy, but you did bring home enough meat to increase the size of your tribe and increase your energy to the point where both your elders and daughters and domestic animals, should you have any, are going to be able to survive the winter. So that was good. Let's try this little. We've already done fighting and negotiating among ourselves, but we haven't done a hunting yet. And normally, the fewest number of hunters will hunt first. But I've got so few remaining here. I need 2 successes. I only have 1 left, that I'm just going to retire from the field.
So you could kill it with a 3.
I could kill it with a 3, and I can't really do. Whether you succeed or fail, the survivors will come home after the hunt phase. So there's no, they can't stay in the hunting grounds. They'll come back home to be reassigned on another phase. So once again, you get 3 dice for your hunters. You don't have to roll for your alpha. We'll say that's an automatic 1.
And let's see.
And this was not a success. We've got any 3s that you roll are a death, hunting the walrus, but you didn't roll any 3s. You only your super hunter got a hit, but you need 2 hits to bring home the ivory, bring home the energy, bring home the babies. These Norse hunters come back, they're boasting over their victory over the Tunics, but their wives are going to complain they didn't bring back any ivory. You're supposed to bring back the bacon, not war stories.
However, I want just to say one thing. This is also a harpoon hunt. So I don't, and Norse has nothing which gets you to reroll harpoon hunts. But had we at some point earlier in the game married Kirima here,
Karima.
then as a husband, she teaches me these things. So
the way of the harpoon.
The way of the harpoon. So the Norse would have had this if the Norse had a cube here, and then we could have re-rolled the 4s here in this particular instance, and we would have got another 1 and a 2 actually.
Oh, that would have been all the difference between.
All the difference to marry Karima here, but it did not happen.
It did not happen because. So it's a fascinating story of cooperation and competition. I'll mention too briefly inventions, these I cards, and domestic animals, the D cards. There are certain hunters that can hunt these animals for meat, but can also possibly domesticate them. And domesticating an animal is very valuable. For instance, the Norwegian elk hound here. You can hunt it for meat. It only needs 1 hit to bring home a baby. But if you roll doubles in your attack, then you can take it into your hand. Take this card out of Greenland, out of South Greenland, put it in your hand for future domestication. And if you do, then we would store it here, so it was upside down. Only the purple side shows us your advantages, which include advantages in the hunt, re-rolling 3s, and also sledding. You could use the dogs for sledding. Another domestic animal showing here is the Barren ground caribou, which also gives you sledding. It's got to be supported every turn during the domestic animal phase, supported with energy, with hay basically. But domestic animals are really incredibly valuable, I would say, in this game. It's in your hand. In order to actually domesticate it, which is coming up the very next phase, is domestic animal phase and the elder actions. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a moment. I just want to say inventions are something else. Your hunters may not have come home with the bacon, so to speak, but if you assign them to try to invent out in the field, maybe they can invent the cable back bow or the toggle head harpoon. There's also inventions how to attract seals underneath the ice by scratching the ice. There's a number of things that help you survive in Greenland, and you hunt for them just like you hunt for an animal. And if you're successful, when you're rolling the doubles or triples, you take it into your hand and then use a crafting elder to be able to realize this tool and manufacture it for future hunters and their advantages. So the next step out of 6 is the domestic animal phase. This is where you support domestic animals that need to be supported. Reindeer have a big advantage in that they eat the moss, reindeer moss, and a type of lichen really, that so they don't need hay. They don't steal from your energy supplies over a cold winter. I know we played painful decisions where you have to decide it's not enough hay. Should you slaughter your domestic animals to keep you alive and then you've lost them? Or should you send elders out in the snow? Choose you love your cow more than your grandfather. You know, or send your daughters out in the snow or something.
I don't think you can do that, though.
No, you can't do that.
You can marry them off.
You can't send your daughter. You can send the old ones out into the snow. The chief, I'm now at the 6th and final phase, the elder actions. The chief is good for keeping your tribe from wandering off into chaos. The shaman is good for all sorts of things. Oh God, this reminds me of a certain sweat lodge.
Yeah, a certain sweat lodge. Nice experience.
I don't like talking about this incident. It's very painful. But the shamans are good for domesticating animals. They're good for witch burning. They're good for banishing. Because it's possible for some of the cultures to assign emissaries or so to other cultures. And we show this by, like for instance, the Norse might come over here and join as some sort of advisor, some sort of capacity, some sort of emigrant into the Tunit culture here. And the shaman may not like this, or the player offices of the shaman may try to burn this foreigner, Auslander.
And here's a good example of that. You can have an elder here that can take these actions, but you can also have several elders if you spend energy and cubes on it, because the cubes are a limited resource. And so you can have several actions in trying to ban this missionary who comes here and try to stir things up.
This is reminding me too much of the sweat lodge situation.
About what's happened. A certain Norse, played by me, assigned a bunch of shamans to teach this missionary from the
it was something a little bit like this, I think. If I can do this, we had the Norse coming, the Tunit coming here as a missionary. Now the idea was that at the time the Norse were polytheistic. And the difference is in polytheism that you get victory points for your trophies. And they had gotten all sorts of, the Norse, the Vikings had gotten all sorts of trophies. I don't think they got a whale, but I think they got the walrus and maybe the polar bear. Polar bear skins were also another luxury item in Europe, by the way.
They had their own domestic animals.
They had their own domestic animals.
So many of these trophy points.
So the idea was, I was seeing a overwhelming Norse victory. And so I took a act of desperation. I killed off my last domestic animal just to get enough energy to send a Christian missionary, because I was Christian by that time, a Christian missionary to the Norse to try to show them the error of their ways. And
What could possibly go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong? I was married to a literate daughter, so I had the book with me, and so this gave me an advantage in converting them. So the Norse, they had such a primitive reaction to this, such an uncivilized reaction to this. Not only did they just have one shaman, they had an entire sweat lodge full of shamans, and they drug this poor missionary in there. But it was a close thing. I mean,
took a while.
It was tense
persistent in the sweat lodge for I think 2 generations.
Yes, but the game depended upon the sweat lodge, and I remember another game where Greenland was so cold, all of the cards had switched over to the cold side. It was pretty cold in that last game we played
Almost
too.
On the cold side.
All of Greenland was frozen over, and the last of my tribe was all huddled around this iron pot, that had been handed down generation after generation, and the pot broke. The pot broke. Therefore, when rounding chaos errors, because I couldn't feed my chief anymore, the last of them died out because I broke a pot. Any rate, this is sort of a fascinating aspect of Greenland, in that the artifacts from the New World, the Old World from Europe, which really can't be fixed. You can try to get bog iron or whatever and primitive smelting to try to fix iron implements. But, and without wood and without iron, you've got to try to desperately maintain your last tools generation after generation, and they're wearing down. I remember the Norse king one day said, we haven't heard from the Greenland colony in a while. In fact, it's been 200 years. Maybe we should send a little supply ship out there and see how they're doing. Well, that was maybe a century too late for the poor Norse. It's not certain. No one knows what happened to them. This relief expedition didn't discover any Norse. They did discover some ruins, and they discovered some Inuits who they said, these must be the Vikings we left behind. Why don't they speak Swedish? Well, it must be some dialect. Why don't they have blue eyes, blonde hair? They look kind of strange too. Nevertheless, this is the only possibility. No, everyone knows that there's no other possible civilized culture in Greece. Any rate, this is one of the great mysteries. If in this game the Vikings can settle the New World. In fact, it's a victory condition if you can actually get the New World to be a viable colony. It's possible that today America would be called Leafland or something else like that, had they been a little bit more diplomatic. I understand Leif himself was a pretty cool guy in dealing with the natives, but his brother Thorvald was pretty much a clumsy oaf, I would say. I mean, the sagas mention, they discovered some natives sleeping under boats, and they took the boats and they jabbed the natives with sharp implements to see if, how much they would bleed, I guess. Some bleed more than others, according to sagas.
I don't know about that.
Any rate, the next day, all these skin-covered boats show up in the Viking camp in Vinland and shower the place with arrows. And Thorvald's dying words were something like, "Oh, this is a paradise we found, but I don't think we're going to have time to enjoy it." This is what the saga's recorded as last words to be. So this is Greenland. Is there anything I missed?
No, but you said an amazing thing about Greenland is all these the situation they were in and the iron and the lack of resources, etc., which is very fitting for a game. But I also would like to say one of the fascinating things about Greenland, the game, this game that we have, is how it is so much. It's so much game in the little box, and so much stories that kind of evolve from this very clever setup of mechanics that interact, and all the things from breaking pots to missionaries in sweat lodges,
And scratching the ice.
scratching the ice,
Creeping over the ice so the seals don't hear you. The Vikings and even the Inuit did not know that meat was available in the dead of winter. Only the Tunis had this ice fishing secrets.
And how this, when every time I play this, I'd say almost every time, it kind of springs stories out of what we're doing with and against each other. So it's a very fun byproduct of the game experience. It's how this plays out.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.